CDBG application. Let's call on John Penbush to speak on it.
Thank you, sir. I'll read the legal notice first. St. Lawrence County will hold a public hearing at 5:20 p.m. on Monday, September 27th, 2021, in the Board of Legislators chamber in the county courthouse, with the purpose of hearing public comments on St. Lawrence County's community development needs and to discuss possible submission of one or more community development block grant applications for the 2021 program year. The CDBG program is administered by the New York State Office of Community Renewal and will make available to local eligible governments approximately $20 million for the 2021 program year for housing, economic development, public facilities, public infrastructure, and planning activities, with the principal purpose of benefiting low and moderate income persons. The hearing will provide further information about the CDBG program and will allow for citizen participation in the development of any proposed grant applications and/or to provide technical assistance to develop alternate proposals. Comments on the CDBG program or the proposed projects will be received at this time. The hearing is being conducted pursuant to Section 570.486, Subpart 1 of the CFR, and in compliance with the requirements of the Housing and Community Development Acts of 1974 as amended. The next paragraph talks about people with disabilities. Nobody with a disability contacted us. Written comments may be submitted to Jason Fotenhauer, County Planning Director, at 48 Court Street, Canton, 13617. They will be received until October the 8th, 2021. That was the legal notice. Now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about citizen participation in the planning and design of the CDBG application. The Community Development Block Grant is a federal community revitalization and development program administered in New York by the Office for Community Renewal. CDBG program provides financial assistance to eligible cities, towns, and villages with populations of less than 50,000 and to counties with populations under 200,000. Eligible communities may apply on their own, or they may ask the county to apply on their behalf. And the county has written many CDBG applications on behalf of individual communities. The primary rule of CDBG is that 70% of all activities must principally benefit low and moderate income persons. And we'll define that later. On September 1st of this year, the Office of Community Renewal announced the availability of $20 million in state and federal funds for the New York State Community Development Block Grant funding for housing activities. The available CDBG funds may be used for housing activities, including rehabilitation, home ownership assistance, manufactured housing replacement, well and septic replacement, and lateral connection assistance. Again, beneficiaries must be primarily LMI people. Applications for the CDBG program must be made through the Community Development Online application system. The application is online, must be submitted electronically. The estimated amount of CDBG funds proposed for activities that benefit a national objective, we have to, in addition to benefiting LMI people, we have to meet one of three national objectives. The first is to provide benefit to persons with low and moderate income, and that's the objective that we meet. It is possible to write an application that provides an area benefit. An area benefit means that the area is at least 51% low and moderate income. But in such a situation, you can then help people who are not necessarily low and moderate income. Applicants that propose a direct benefit must exclusively serve LMI persons. That's what we do with our housing programs. Only people with low and moderate incomes qualify. You can also write an application for a limited clientele benefit. And that means that you would provide assistance to persons presumed by HUD to be LMI. For example, abused children, elderly persons, battered spouses, homeless persons, disabled persons, and others are presumed by HUD to be principally LMI. If you were funding the senior center, everybody who goes to the senior center who benefits from their funds is what, 60 or over? Then they are presumed to be, because they're elderly, they are presumed to be low income. I don't have to do income surveys, I don't have to do any of that. Funding limits for 2021, as I said, is $20 million. Towns and villages and cities may apply for a maximum of $750,000. Counties may apply for a maximum of $1,500,000. Our proposal is to ask for $650,000 to help 13 low and moderate income households rehabilitate their homes. Participating households, based on our recent experience with this, participating households will receive grants approximately $40,000 per housing unit to make repairs. Our program will serve exclusively LMI persons, and we anticipate an overall direct benefit to LMI persons more than 90%. Remember, 70% is the minimum. We're talking about more than 90%. We intend to distribute these funds on a countywide basis. And we have operated a housing rehab program since 1982, and we've assisted over 630 households to make repairs to their homes. Households may be eligible to participate in our program if they earn less than 80% of the county's median household income, and I'll explain that in a minute. They also must own their home and have lived in it for more than a year. They must complete an application, verify household income and ownership, have homeowners insurance, and some other things. We are committed to helping those households with the greatest need. We have a waiting list of over 100 households. When we get the decision that it's funded, we will look for those households with the lowest income, whose houses are in the poorest condition. And then we will look for some other priorities, like are there elderly people, are there small children there, et cetera, et cetera. And those will be the people we will first help. Persons interested in participating in the program are encouraged to contact the St. Lawrence County Planning Office at 315-379-2292 to be put on the program's waiting list. The application deadline is 4 p.m. on Friday, October 29th, 2021. The grant award is anticipated in about 75 days or early 2022. Program startup typically commences within 90 days of the grant award. And we have a maximum of 2 years to complete the project from the date of the grant award. Now I have a couple of paragraphs that I just need to read straight out. St. Lawrence County maintains an anti-displacement and relocation plan for its housing activities. In the event that a community development block grant funded project demolishes or converts low and moderate income housing, the county will implement this anti-displacement and relocation plan. The plan outlines the procedures to provide relocation and displacement assistance to households, as well as preventative steps to minimize displacement from occurring. If I'm working on your house and you can't be there while we're working on the house, we will find you a motel room or something similar for the 2 days or the week or whatever it takes for us to get done in your house. This happens mostly with lead work because we raise lead dust, and until we get it cleaned up, the homeowner and especially children shouldn't be there. As an applicant for CDBG funds, St. Lawrence County is committed to provide technical assistance to groups representative of persons with LMI that request assistance. The application deadline is October 29th. If you ask me for help on a grant application, it's probably not going to be for this year's grant. But if you ask for help with an application, we'll be working with you to make sure that you're ready for the next round of funding. This hasn't happened often, but it has in fact happened. Most recently in Edwards. That was about 10 years ago. Another paragraph I need to read out straight. The County of St. Lawrence is an equal opportunity housing provider. The county and its subrecipients do not discriminate against applicants for housing based on their race, color, religion, national origin, age, gender, familial status, or disability. As I mentioned before, written comments in this application can be submitted to Jason Fotenhauer, Director of Planning, 48 Court Street, Canton, New York, 13617, or by email. If you're going to email, send it to the board office and they'll get it to us. Now, on the last page of the handout, if you got it, the handout, is the current limits, income limits for LMI people in St. Lawrence County. This was pulled from a multi-hundred page document. But what it says is in St. Lawrence County, New York, if you read across, you have a column for persons per household. Then you have a column for under 30% of county median household income, under 50% county median household income, under 80% county median household income. So if you're a single individual, if your annual income in the last 12 months was under $38,850, you are under 80% of the county's median household income. Therefore, you would qualify for participation in this program. And going down the list, if you have a household of 4, you can make $55,500, just under that, and still qualify. So low and moderate income people is not dirt poor. Although we do try to help the people with the lowest incomes first. Are there questions?
John, a couple things. Who makes the determination? I mean, you must have several applicants that have poor housing and are low income. And how do you differentiate between that? I mean, who is the committee?
We have a prioritization system.
Okay.
And as I said earlier, how low income are you? Is your household? Because that speaks to your ability to make repairs on your own. How bad is the house that you're living in? Especially, does it have health or safety issues that should be addressed? Are there children, or are there elderly, or are there disabled people for whom there is likely no other recourse? Going on from that, let's assume that all things are equal. At that point, it comes down to a matter of who gets their application in, who gets all the stuff that we ask for, income verifications, proof of insurance, et cetera, et cetera. If you get all your stuff in before Jim Reagan does, and everything else is equal, we will probably assist you first.
Who's the team that makes that decision?
It's done by our subrecipient.
Okay.
That way, it's blind to us. And so as the grantee, we can't be said that we're trying to throw it to one person or another.
Yeah, the second question is that you mentioned that filing electronically, that you have 100 in the waiting list. It doesn't seem to be a problem, but it must be for some to file the application electronically. No?
Yes, the electronic filing of the application, of our application, the OCR, is somewhat cumbersome. The CD online, if you were trying to do the grant this year for the first time, you'll probably be calling my office 3 or 4 times because you run into something, you just get stuck somewhere. And
But the homeowners themselves have
the
to file.
homeowners, no, they
Okay.
come to us, they come to the subrecipient, and they fill out a paper application. So yeah,
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Any other legislators have any questions before we open it to the public? Okay, any citizen wanting to address the board on this issue is asked to stand at the microphone and for a period of not more than 5 minutes, and state your name at the time that you stand in front of the podium. I don't think there's anyone here to speak on it. So, I'm going to declare the public hearing closed. No one's here. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Explaining. Thank you.
Okay, Phil, you ready? I'd like to call this September 27th finance meeting a call to order, and approval of tonight's agenda moved by Mr. Mesa, second by Mr. Smithers. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. We'll state that David Forsythe is excused tonight, he's on vacation. Approval of the minutes for August 23. Moved by Rita Curran, seconded by Mr. Lightfoot. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Tonight, we have a broadband survey results. We have Dave Wolf, the Telecom Division Manager of DANK, and Lori Marr, Director of Communications and Public Affairs, also from DANK. Welcome. Lori, let's step right up to the line.
I'm gonna start us out and then turn it over to Dave for the magical things. We also have with us here tonight, Carl Ferrone. He's the Executive Director of the Development Authority, and he's the one who will answer all the questions that you have.
Excellent.
Okay, so we're gonna talk tonight about the broadband study that the Development Authority and the county partnered together on. And I just wanna make clear that we partnered together and we hired a subject matter expert, ECC Technologies. Unlike what you may have seen in the Watertown Daily Times over the weekend, we did not drive the roads and actually do the study. ECC Technologies did. We had a working group, myself and Dave, and the county assigned Jason Fotenhauer and Rick Johnson. We were the working group that kind of did the grunt tasks that were involved in the project. So the purpose of the presentation tonight is just to give a brief overview of some of the key highlights. There's much more detail contained in the actual reports themselves. Go ahead, Dylan. So I'm going to talk about, well, this is the fancy name ECC gave to it, the Broadband Aggregation and Adoption Toolset. We just call it the survey part of the study. So for the survey part of the study, go ahead, Dylan. What did we do? It was the task of our working group to drive people to the survey, to get people to take the web-based survey. And I know that you had talked about this with Jason in some of your committee meetings, and we did a number of different things you can see up there. Well, you probably can't see because the type is too small, I'm sorry. We engaged in a lot of activities to try to drive people to take the survey. We did paid advertising. The Development Authority spent about $3,500 additional dollars advertising the surveys. We posted flyers in communities. I drove around the county and literally nailed up flyers on telephone poles and very out of the way places. I got a very interesting tour of the community, of the county. We distributed, information was distributed at COVID vaccination locations. We partnered with organizations and they sent it out to their memberships. The colleges sent it out to all of their faculty, staff listservs. The County Office for the Aging distributed flyers to their clients. I worked with St. Lawrence Lewis BOCES. They sent the link out to all of their school districts, which sent it out to all of their parents. So we tried to get as many people as possible to go to the site and do the survey. Go ahead, Dylan. So what did we get for responses? We actually did really well. We got 2,079 total responses to the survey. 96% of that was residential, but that you usually see a large proportion of residential people responding because typically businesses are located in community centers and they have access, and so they're not really interested.
Thank you so much. I'm in. Awesome.
So of the respondents, 11.2% reported that they had no access to broadband, no service whatsoever. Then if you looked at the people who reported that they had no access or access only via dial-up, satellite, or a cellular hotspot, that number jumped to 45.5%. But the most amazing part of the survey was the feedback section. People could leave comments at the end after you did the survey. I'm sure most of you did the survey, noticed that. There is a total of 869 comments that people wrote. Some of them wrote a lot. And ECC Technologies, the contractor, said in all of their years of doing this, they have never, ever seen anything close to that. And so what that speaks to is the passion around this issue. A lot of people in the county feel very passionate about it. Most of the comments were saying, oh, we need access and we've been waiting for years. So of the people, next slide, Dylan, of the people who reported that they did have access, okay, of the people that reported they did have access, by far, 40% reported it was via cable, which is Spectrum. That's the light blue section there. So 40% had cable, 12% are using a cellular hotspot. We saw a lot more of those go up during the pandemic. 9% reported that their access is through satellite, which is primarily HughesNet. And 13% is via fiber. Now you will see for every question that was asked, and sometimes multiple, you will always see in the report an associated or corresponding map. And it shows you, so you have the pie chart, then you also have the map, so you can see where in the county the colored dots show you, like the light blue dot where you see those, that's people who have cable. We see a lot of green dots on there, those are cellular hotspots. So when you see the report, you will be able to look at it in map form as well. Next slide. For those who reported that they do have access, in the comments, a lot of people said they felt that they were paying too much for what they received. And a lot of them said that they, let's say relayed their urgent need for high-speed access. And we just put a couple of example comments on there. Somebody said, we've been trying to get internet for over 14 years at this household. Another person said, we've not been able to get any internet at this address. We would not have moved here if we had known this. This is the tenor of the comments that we saw. Next slide, Dylan. But even though they want better access and better service and higher speeds, most people said that they're not willing to pay more or very much more for improved service. Over 50%, that's the largest purple block there, said they are not willing to pay any more for improved service. So that's kind of interesting. Next slide. For those who do not have access, 83% said because it's simply not available, and 9% said it's because it's too expensive. So what's the impact of that? Other questions were asked about why people felt it was important and how it impacted other parts of their lives. So as an example, 65% of the respondents said that it causes a problem for them when they're trying to work from home, particularly during the pandemic. And 56% says it causes a problem for kids trying to do schoolwork from home, which I don't think that comes as news probably to any of us. Next slide. So for those who don't have any access at all right now, they were asked how much they would be willing to pay for new or significantly improved service. And the highest number of people, about 37%, said they're willing to pay $25 to $50 a month, and another 35% said they're willing to pay $51 to $75 a month. Again, this is all data that's contained in the report that's just really important when you're seeking grant money or when you sit down to try to strategize solutions. Next slide. So this was an interesting thing that we found in St. Lawrence County. For all respondents, the people who did and didn't have any access, 83% said it's either very important or important to have a choice in providers. I mean, clearly this is because people feel if there's a choice in providers, they're gonna get better service, they're gonna get more competitive pricing. That's the belief. Whether or not that's the reality, we don't know. But so now, in the interest of time, I'm gonna ask my colleague Dave Wolf, who's our director of telecommunications, to come up, and he's going to talk about the inventory part of the report.
Thanks, Lori, and thank you everyone for having us. And we really did enjoy working with Jason and Rick Johnson, and Lori Remington helped out some too from St. Lawrence and Spokane. The purpose of the inventory was really to gather, next slide and the next one. Purpose of the inventory was to gather real-time data on wire line, so this is important, wire line technology. So in other words, we gathered the towers, but we can't get the coverage of those cell towers or for the wireless internet providers. So it does not include wireless coverage. So some people may have the ability to get wireless internet. As shown in the report, there are some who did report that. or they use hotspots. But this is to gather what is cable TV or fiber infrastructure to the home. So we mapped it all, and it's all available online for everybody to look at if you're interested, or for you guys to look at. We mapped, I'll go to the next one, please. The only thing I'll say is the inventory also, it's the current status or a few months ago, so we will need to update it periodically to make sure that obviously people continue to build and do deliver broadband, and we'll need to update the mapping. This is just a quick map of where there were New York State Broadband Program awards. That was that $500 million award program. So besides looking at the physical inventory, we looked at where grants have been delivered. So we know we don't want to cover someplace that already has grant money and is being in the middle of being constructed. So that shows the grant funding, and Citizens of Hammond is the pink, Verizon is the yellow, TDS Telecom is the blue, and Slick Network Solutions / Nickelville Tel is the red. The green is Hughes Satellite, and that has been deemed not to be broadband by the federal government, so those areas are still available for federal funding because it doesn't have enough speed to be considered broadband by the federal government. So there was, that was 9,000 locations and 43 million for the North Country that got funded for St. Lawrence County. The next map, next slide, is the most recently awarded federal grant. You can see not a lot in St. Lawrence County. The red is Slick, and the blue is SpaceX, which is a satellite-based technology, but it's brand new. It's supposed to be higher speed, lower latency, still in trial phase, but it is available in areas. So that's SpaceX. The only downside to the RDOF funding is it has a 6-year implementation timeframe. So even though it was recently awarded, it could not be installed for a while. But those are areas where they won't duplicate grant funding. So you're not going to be able to get additional funding if you needed to do something. Next slide, please. The inventory that they collected was, like I said, the fiber, the coax. They did collect the central office locations and remote terminals. That's just information that helps us to see where people can be served from, but it's not that critical to this. And then the wireless towers and water tower sites, which would be good for wireless installations. Next slide, please. That's a map of the wireless towers. It's a little hard to see. The darker dots are the water towers. The lighter dots are cell towers that they found, or they don't have to be cell towers. I guess they could be other towers, maybe microwave towers, but those are the vertical assets, they call them, or the infrastructure. Next slide, please. In the study, I'm not going to go through this, but in the study, each zip code, they did look at the coverage by area. So they do provide each area who's there and what percent of that zip code that they cover. So you can see, like as an example, in Canton, it says that Charter covers about 92% of the town. But that's in the report, so we won't go through it. The next slide is the boundaries. This is more informational. You can see Citizens of Hammond is pink, Verizon is yellow, TDS Telecom is red, and Nickelville Tel / Slick is blue. Those are just tells you, the grants that came in will match up to these, and those are the telephone company providers. Obviously, Spectrum is also through there as well. And that shows their central offices or remote terminals. Next slide, please. This is the telephone company fiber to the home build out in St. Lawrence County. So all of those red and other colored lines, green and purplish lines are the fiber build outs. A lot of that is relatively recent. The Governor area was just finished up by Verizon. They put Fios in that area. You can see a lot of the green is Slick area, and blue is Nickelville Tel, which is still Slick. But so the telephone company build out is pretty extensive in the northern part, but not too much in the southern part of the county. Next slide, please. The next slide is the cable TV network. It shows 2 lines in many places because they do run a hybrid fiber coax system, so that shows where they have coax and where they have fiber. And that's pretty much spectrum in the whole area. So this is their network in St. Lawrence County. Next slide, please. This very busy slide is the combination of all of the cable TV infrastructure, all of the fiber to the home infrastructure, and all the cell towers. And that's all in a mapping system that we'll show you in a minute here. Next slide, please. This shows the remaining grant eligible areas for St. Lawrence County. So these are areas that you could still apply for. There's several grants out there. There's going to be an RDOF phase 2. There's a reconnect phase 2. There's the infrastructure bill that has $65 billion for broadband. So there are several programs coming up, and these are areas that you could apply for.
That is a brown, Dave, or is it
The green, I'm sorry, the green areas are what's left to be still funded, so. Good question.
I thought you had mentioned though that they were wireless, but they didn't.
The satellite system didn't, that's why those green areas are still eligible for funding, because you're right, because the Hughes satellite system is not. SpaceX is brand new, and I don't know if the federal government will continue to say that is.
That's what I
right now.
SpaceX.
Next slide, please. So this is an example of the mapping that then is available that you guys can look at and that we all can look at. It allows us to drill down. This is live. You can zoom right down to the house level and see each individual house that is served or unserved, or you can, go back out. So on the left-hand side, what you're looking at is a section of Canton that shows the pink dots are actually houses. So we can, as you zoom in, you can see if there's, we noticed in some areas, we go, oh, look, there's not served, and as you zoom in, there's no houses on that road either, so it doesn't need to be. But the pink dots are houses, so that gives you a good idea. And then the lines, like the white lines, spectrum, the blue line is slick. So that tells you where there is infrastructure and where there isn't. And then the one on the right is a similar map. I didn't exactly line this one up as well, but it's similar location with the blue. The blue then shows you what has been grant funded. So you can make sure you can look at that and say, okay, we can't include that. And if we do go for a grant, we can't include that little piece of that Irish settlement road there that we can't use, but the rest of it would be available. So next slide, please. So then what we did, we asked our GIS folks to do, and they did it, is we said, it's good that you show everything that is available. Can you show us now all the roads where we don't have any infrastructure? And that's what this map is. And you can see in the northern part, you're pretty well covered. There's a lot of, a little road here, a road there that needs to be filled in. But in the southern part of the county, southeast part of the county, there is some work to do. And we asked our GIS folks then too to pull every parcel on these roads on the roads that do not have anything, how many parcels are there? And then we filtered out everything that didn't have a 911 address. And it looks like, and I reported this incorrectly to our committee, but after revisiting it, it looks like about 5,000 homes or 10% that do not have broadband infrastructure to the home. And some of that needs to be quality controlled, but we did do a quick check on 40 or 50 of those, and we see that it's pretty accurate. So I think there's a few homes and camps right along the seaway that maybe got missed because of, I think they drive down the main road and didn't drive down some of the smaller branches, and so they missed them. But for the most part, I think that's pretty accurate. So it looks like there's about 5,000 that don't have broadband that we can continue to work on. And again, this map is available to people. You can zoom right in and do whatever you want with it. And now for the, I'm going to turn it back over to Lori for kind of the summary of findings and next steps.
Where exactly online does one go to get that information?
So just let us work through Jason. So this is not available to the public. It's up to the county what we do with this, but we have not made it available to the public. But it's password protected. because of many reasons. It's very hard, the main one being the county planner maybe doesn't want to get a ton of phone calls, because there's a ton of information on this. It's got multiple layers, it's got different ways you can look at things, and so it would be confusing to someone without a tutorial. So anyway, if you let Jason know, we will give you a password and you can log in and do what you want. We're willing to do a tutorial too.
Okay, so I've been contacted by a couple of folks, local here in Canton, that are interested in finding the areas, or identifying the areas that have no grant, coverage. And that's what they want to focus on, so that somebody can apply for those grants to try and get that. How do they find that out without access to the program?
These maps are through our GIS system. The maps that we showed you earlier in the presentation are all part of the actual study. And the county has to make a decision, I don't know if Ruth has decided yet or whatever, that they'll probably end up putting the study online. And then people can see the maps, like where the RDOF grants are and where the state ones are and where they aren't. So they can see anybody, well, if the county chooses to put the study on its website, anybody will be able to see that. This more detailed information will probably be more used to, like the folks in the planning department who are gonna write big, grants and things like that.
We share everything with them, so I will say that Jason and Rick and Heidi all have access to this, so they can provide that information. And the spreadsheet that we just did that has all of the addresses by town that do not have access. Now that has to be, we just want to, continue to quality check that, but I think that it's available to them, and so they have it.
Do I have a question? Basically, our family owns property in Adirondack Park in the town of Colton. And so basically, when I try to put broadband in, it's only Hughes, I'd have to go through Hughes to do it. And then in the meantime, Slick asked for rights to put a pole on our property. I'm wondering how that's happening. And I looked at your map properly, it didn't appear that Slick had access to that area in Colton.
Well, so Slick has access to anywhere they want to go. They just didn't get grant funded for that area. So they're building all through here, and as they build out, and the Slick's been great to work with, they shared their mapping with us. So we were able to load that up there without even having to they still had to do the driving around, but. So just because it says who is building out doesn't mean someone else can't. So Slick can build wherever they want, and they are building down through there. They just didn't get grant funding for it. And at the time, they weren't done, so when we, was it a couple months ago that we finished the driving around or so, that it wasn't built out then, but that's what I'm saying is that as they grow, they continue to grow.
So basically, you're telling me Slick is going through the area, but there's no time frame where they're gonna actually bring broadband to the houses, maybe?
Yeah, I would say, that could be, we can ask them. I don't know, I don't want to speak for them. I don't know what their plans are, for that area right now, but we could find out.
Thank you.
Joe, you got a question?
Yeah, if, where was I gonna go with this? If, the county, or can the county on its own put that on the county's website, or do we have to get authorization or permission or, agreement with the bank in order to do
Well,
that?
we will have to look into that, but we have licenses for our GIS system.
I understand
So
that.
we have to be a little careful with that. We can't just give permission to anybody in the world. So, I'm not sure how that would work.
Okay, so who's the best people, the IT people and bank's IT people to, get together and make a decision about, you can put this on, but you can't put that on, or how's that work?
Like I said, the report, the county can choose, the county, you guys can decide to make the report available to the public and put it just on your website. I know like
Okay.
Lewis County put it on their website under the Department of Planning. But,
That's all I'm interested in. Laura,
yeah, that's,
is
yeah.
I want
that'll
to
be
make
a
sure
decision
no other
that-
hoops to jump through.
You can do it right now.
Yeah, you could do that right now.
We can do it today.
With these reports were paid with for public money, so,
Okay,
yeah, the reports are not a problem.
okay, thank you.
Okay, so just briefly, if you want to just go to the next slide, Dylan. So what are the next steps? So it's important that everybody understands that this is only the first baby step on a path towards trying to bring better broadband to the county. They're not going to be instantaneous changes. The county will need to prioritize based on all this data and information, and then, seek solutions. And it's also, Dave didn't say this time, he is fond of saying, it is not ever going to be a one-size-fits-all solution. There might be an area of the county where, wireless is going to be the best solution. There might be another area of the county where fiber to the home is the only solution. So these are things that have to be looked at moving forward. Next slide. So this is just a brief summary of the findings in the report. This is what, again, the report that ECC put together and their findings. So the high response rate from all different kinds of groups indicates a strong interest in the broadband issue among residents, which I don't think comes as any surprise to you guys. St. Lawrence County is underserved in many rural areas that have been awarded a grant to satellite providers, like Dave was talking about HughesNet. And the reason for that is because oftentimes satellite is dependent upon the weather. There can be weather impacts, and oftentimes it slows down. From some of the comments in the report, you'll see people say that they start at the beginning of the month and they have really good speeds, and then as they use up their allotment, it slows down at the end of the month. And broadband service in general is lacking in many areas of the county. So some roads in the county have CATV-based broadband service, but with significant breaks in the service area, and there's a high cost of construction to single homes. And one thing I will say about that, when we talk about breaks in the service area, I live in the town of Madrid, so I'll just use this as an example. The hamlet of Madrid is well served, and my house is 4 miles from that, and then 3 miles down the road is the Four Corners of Chase Mills, and they're well served. But Spectrum isn't interested in those of us in the middle, because the houses are spread out and, you can't see your neighbors. So that's what we mean when we say breaks in the service area. So as you look through solutions, one of the solutions, can be to sit down with providers and say, hey, how can we fill in these gaps? You're here and you're here. How do we get these 7 miles served? That's just one example. So a lot of underserved areas, well, some of them are being addressed through the programs that Dave talked about. But again, under RDOF, the providers have up to 6 years to implement. And some people indicated in the comments that they didn't want to wait that long. In some areas of county, customers have a choice of providers where others do not. And like I said before, having a choice of providers is viewed as an opportunity to maybe obtain better service and more competitive pricing. Next slide. So any solution is likely to require a partnership between the county and service providers, working together. And ECC recommends that, representatives of the county meet with providers to establish relationships, meet on a semi-regular basis to develop a partnership and talk about potential solutions. Another option is, maybe incentives could be developed to entice providers to expand to unserved areas, especially when they have infrastructure close by. In areas where there is service but breaks in the service, like what I was just talking about on my road, maybe the provider could be approached to extend service to those areas. Then ECC went through and they looked at all the data and they said that they found 5 possible areas, target areas for consideration based upon the data they gathered. And those are Parrishville, Brazier, Pitcairn, Canton, and Oswegatchie. And they detail the number in the report, they detail the number of households that there are in those areas. And those are important data points when you go to providers and say, obviously providers have to have an ROI. And when you go to them, you can use this data and say, hey, there's this many households that want to have service. So there's a lot more detail about those 5 target areas contained in the report. Next slide, please. Another suggestion is to create a partnership with broadband service providers to solicit grant programs that would help pay for the infrastructure to expand. And that's being done in some other areas of the state. The information that was developed in this study is the basis that you can use for applying for a lot of these grants. I was at the, Senator Schumer was in Lewis County at the end of August to talk about the pending federal infrastructure program. And he talked about that like 65 billion of it or whatever was supposed to be targeted for broadband infrastructure. And I said, how exactly is that going to work? Where's the pot of money? How do we apply? And they said that a lot of that money would be going into, would most likely go into existing programs like RDOF and other programs. And Senator Schumer specifically said that the studies that our 3 counties have done, we're way ahead of the game because we're ready. As soon as they figure out how you can access the money, we're ready. We've got the figures, we've got the data, and we can write the grants right away. So it's positioned us well. And then they just mentioned a few programs in the study that funding programs, the Reconnect grants through USDA, and then there's grants through New York State, the Northern Border Regional Commission, Lewis County just got a grant through them. So there are lots of opportunities, and once the county decides how they want to move forward, if they want to form a committee to delve into it deeper or look at solutions, I think Carl makes the same offer that the Development Authority would be willing to assist, but the county has to determine its priorities. We can't tell you what your priorities need to be. You guys have got to figure that out, and then we can help from there. So that was all we had for our presentation. I'm sorry we went a little over. I talked as fast as I possibly could. Does anyone have any other questions?
Mr. Denisha.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lori, not a question, but a comment. I find it ironic that it was 2016 that Governor Cuomo was here in the North Country at Potsdam State with great fanfare and said that by the end of 2019, there would not be a home in New York State that was not connected or not have the ability to be connected to broadband. That's 5 years ago. And it seems like we're pretty much the same situation that we were then. For a long time, anybody that had a lift truck, they were stringing cable. Cable was being strung everywhere. It wasn't connected to anything, but it was being strung. I've got folks that live in my district, which is District 6, and one case in point in particular is in Russell on the Hill Road. They have children, public school children. One is a college age child. Obviously, the last year with COVID, trying to do the remote learning has been, for some folks, it's been impossible. In any case, difficult. So, it's just, I think it's sad that, we recognized this 5 years ago, and,
Part of the issue is when people want to declare a win. Okay, it's done. Everybody's all set. It's because of the way some agencies measure success or measure coverage, and they measure by census blocks. And if one home in a census block, and that works great if you're in a metro area, but one home in a census block in these rural areas, if one home is covered, they're like, okay, it's done. Everybody in that census block's good. And it's wrong. It's wrong. So, yes, unfortunately, and people discovered other things during the pandemic too, like maybe the service they had before, wireless service, was okay when there was one person shopping in the evening, then all of a sudden you have kids trying to go to do school from home, and people are trying to work from home. That's what happened in our house. And all of a sudden it was like, what's the matter? Well, then you discover you don't have enough speed. So that's another, issue that we're dealing with too. People need more speed for the things they're doing now and the way they're living. A lot of comments you'll see in the report, a lot of people are saying, this should be like electricity. Everybody should just have internet. Remember when, what year did electricity, get brought to everyone's house? So that's the way people feel about it, and I don't blame them.
Any of the Zoomers have any questions? Mr. Berg? Go ahead, John.
The coverage, do you have the maps that show the coverage for Time Warner? At one time and somewhere around when the time that Larry was referencing, 2016, the merger of Time Warner and Charter was contingent upon the new entity providing service to their entire coverage area. And the maps that show their coverage areas is much larger than the maps that show their actual coverage. And I guess I'm wondering maybe two things. Do you have those maps that show the coverage that Time Warner supposedly has, plus any knowledge of that agreement that they were supposed to provide high-speed internet within their coverage area?
So we do have the maps that was on there, and unfortunately, the agreement with Spectrum was that not that they had to provide coverage to everywhere in their what they term a franchise area. So all of Spectrum's franchise agreements have a clause that says that if there's less than 20 homes per mile, then they don't have to do that. The agreement that they got with the state was that in order to approve the merger, they had to wire up 145,000 unserved homes. But they did not say where those had to be. So Spectrum got to decide which 145,000 they would build out to. And the state has worked with them and I guess agreed that they did that, but they didn't have to do it to every single home in each of their franchise territories. That was not part of that agreement.
Have they done the 145,000?
I know they were very close. I don't know that it's actually signed off on, but I know that they were well behind in the beginning and that they did get. And last I heard they were quite close. I don't know for sure. The state broadband program office is monitoring that, and they would know.
The suggestion to work with the service providers, I guess I wonder what leverage do we have if it's not profitable for them, then what would be the framework for our work with them?
Well, I think a couple of things. One is jointly working with them on grant opportunities. That's been something that we've seen in other counties. They've actually sat down with the Spectrums and the Frontiers or the Verizons and the Slicks of the world and said, hey, this is where we want to build out, give us some pricing. And in some cases, they've asked several people for the same area and chosen whoever was the least. I think that you make a good point, and you did too, you're right. In 2016, they said everything would be covered. And I think that I would say that they did a really good job of getting a lot done, but they went, everything that was covered was in the easy areas. That 500 million the state gave us got us to the next level of easiness. And now we're at the hardest level. And so I think there's a few things you can do. One, develop maybe some policy around 5G antennas so that maybe you can use some county and town infrastructure to help to push the deployment of 5G, which is 5G cellular technology will also includes from all three of the main carriers a broadband to the home select a choice. So you can choose to have broadband to the home and those are 200 to 300 megabits per second speed. So that will be a competing technology, or in some cases, the only technology. And, you know, this next one gets controversial, it's hard to do, but I know some people are looking at, you know, this 20 homes per mile issue, or maybe in some rural areas, lowering the taxes on fiber infrastructure, because, you know, if you can make it, I won't say the service provider, but they said that by the time they pay the DOT fees and the taxes that they have and everything, that they can't make it now in New York State unless they have 12 homes per mile. It used to be 4 or 5, but things have changed recently, and they have to have 12 per mile to even make a break even. And so maybe in some of those more rural areas, there might have to be something looked at where the property tax on that fiber is a little bit lower.
Thank you.
Mr. Reagan.
Do you have any idea what Verizon is doing with FiOS? I've got lots of calls from people who tell me that they've got they've been told by Verizon technicians that there's FiOS out in front of their home, but that Verizon won't let them hook up.
I don't know for sure, but I will say that it takes a little time from the construction, then it's gotta get put, you know, once it's constructed, they have to test it, and once it's tested, they gotta hook up the electronics, then they gotta put it in their provisioning system, because, you know, it's a call center in some other state somewhere that's telling you if you have it or not. So my guess is that it's a very recent build out that they've done, and my guess is that they're slowly kind of putting more information into their system so that they can tell you whether or not it's available. But I don't know for sure that that's the case. And I don't know what their build out plans are. I know that they put it in places where they got funding. And I don't think they have any plans to expand other places, but maybe they do. But where they are today, the other issue I will tell you, because it's not just Verizon, I've heard this from other providers, is there's so much demand that it's hard to get the companies that run the drops into your home. And so I know one other home company who's really struggling to keep up with well, not really struggling, but can't keep up with demand, because they don't build it into your home and they can't find any contractors because there's so much federal money that's been given to people to build out that it's hard to find the technicians to do some of the work.
Now, when you say that the county has to prioritize, and that you'll work with the county, what exactly does that mean in terms of like those 5 areas that you said might be good target areas? What are we actually talking about? Who writes the grant? Who applies for it? Who provides, how does this work in real life?
I think that the planning and the development is what we're saying is what we would like to have you guys kind of help with. We're willing to help with, you know, each location maybe has, when we say prioritize, there might be a location that you look at that you say, hey, you know, they don't have anything, and there's not enough people here to run fiber to the home. So let's look at some other options like wireless. Okay, well, wireless, there's some very expensive technology, and there's some less expensive technology. And maybe you say, hey, it's a lot of, these people just need something, and maybe we'll go with the stuff that gets 100 or 50 megs to the home because it's cost effective. If we go with the stuff that gets 200 megs to the home, it's very expensive. And let's look at the coverages and stuff like that. So that's what we mean by prioritizing. What is it that you want to accomplish? Is it the best technology, or is it just, hey, let's make sure they have something first, and then we can maybe add to it later. In terms of who writes the grants, it really depends on the grant. Most of the time it's been the county, but I know they got a lot of help from the providers in these other areas. You know, we've been working, because they've done first with Lewis County some, and they have put out 3 grants, they've been awarded 2, and they wrote them, but they had help with the providers, and we just so some people don't think we're in it just to profit, because we are a wholesale provider, but we are not included in those. We didn't say, well, we'll do the build up. We're just helping them to kind of work with the other providers to get to the table.
So, in like, for example, the Lewis County Planning Department, they just like went with this, just like, I'm sure Jason will, if that's what you guys tell him to do. But, and then the planning department, people who were writing the grants, they would call Dave or call someone in his office and say, ask questions. Hey, how many people will a tower serve? Or, and then he would explain, well, it depends on the height. So that's the way we've, worked with Lewis County so far. Jefferson County hasn't, they just are getting their data as well and trying to figure out how they're gonna proceed. So that's, in real life, that's how it worked. And then, you gotta look at the 5 areas that I mentioned, that's just what ECC saw from the data. You guys might have your own ideas about what areas of the county need to be served for some other reason. It's your county and they're your towns, and so choosing where to work first or what areas to put in the first grant application, that's what you have to do. We can't tell you that.
We would be very happy to sit, as far as an ad hoc committee, that worked well with Lewis County, working with it. They have a couple of legislatures, and then staff, and then 2 development authority staff. And basically, we look at the GIS maps, and, the study is one thing, it's great. The actual GIS maps and actually being able to zoom in and see where the infrastructure is, where the homes are. And then the county, working with, Dave, who is our subject matter expert, basically being able to say, if we put a tower here, we're gonna be able to serve 1,000 residents. But if we went over here, it might be only 200. And then just making a decision based on those types of facts. And then at the end of the day, we also have to be able to get a service provider who would be willing to actually come and provide services. So they want to have a return on investment. So the more people you can serve, the better for them as well. So basically, it's just a working partnership between St. Lawrence County, the Development Authority, and just trying to figure out, because the worst thing that we can do is take the study and shelve it. I think we're in a unique position right now, and there's going to be all kinds of federal money that's going to be able to help us solve some of these problems that we have. And we'd like to help you folks.
Could I direct a question to Chairman Sheridan?
Sure.
Bill, could we ask or suggest that you appoint a working group with the planning office and the IT people and DANK and some legislators to do what they're suggesting so we get our money's worth out of the study and so it doesn't end up on a shelf?
Yeah, we could do that. We do have a planning department that I think is on top of it as well.
Jason and Heidi have been very involved.
So it's if you feel strongly enough about it, then we could have the legislators involved with helping the planning department. But the question is, do we think they got it covered?
I mean, we can ask, make sure Jason and Ruth are asked.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
we take this information and do something with it.
Yeah.
We have Rick Johnson, our IT director on there. You care to make a comment, Rick? Go ahead, please.
Sure. Answer questions, do a dance. All I would say is that it is important. I strongly feel and I've been involved with Jason from the beginning with this. I'm very passionate about it, as all are. And I think I agree that it is critical that all effort will be wasted if we don't follow through with this. I think it's critical that planning be a part of it. I think it's critical that IT be a part of it. And I think it's critical that we have, your wisdom and oversight from the legislative body and administration, because you have an angle on this that we do not, in terms of the authority that you carry and the input for the county mission and the goals. And I think that working in partnership together, that we can actually take, because we want to take all numbers and statistics and all this craziness, and it's great information. What we want to actually do is, put that chicken in every pot. So everybody that needs it, I really do feel it's like university. I feel that we are in a day, and especially for what we've seen in the last 18 months, there's a critical need. We all know that. And I really think that it's important that we work together to fill that need.
Okay, thank you, Rick. Anyone else? Mr. Denisha.
Yeah, I agree with legislator Reagan and Rick. I don't want to be in the spot 6 years from today, and someone saying, hey, these guys had the information 6 years ago. They had an opportunity to act, they didn't do anything. So I think it's critical for our education, it's critical for, I don't know who it was, Lori mentioned about electricity. And to be honest, in today's world, without high-speed internet, you're pretty much in the dark ages.
It's also important to remember that this study, because things in the world of broadband and internet and access change so rapidly every week, that this study is a snapshot in time. So 6 years from now, it's going to be, just archaic. 2 years from now, it might be out of date. So it is, and I think, I hate to keep mentioning Lewis County, but they were the ones we worked with first. And they, right out of the gate, they immediately started applying for grants and stuff. So yeah, I think it's a snapshot in time. Just remember that.
So to recap on my answer, Jim, we can have a committee within the next 2 or 3 days and put together, and I would encourage the legislators who really would like to be involved with that, give me a call, let me know, who it is that really would like to jump on this and assist the IT and the planning department and so forth. So the answer is yes, we'll take advantage of your recommendation.
So we'll take this opportunity, Carl, Ferrone, and Dan, would you like to do some closing comments here? You don't get up here this often. This is the second time I've seen you come right up to the mic.
Yes, I
don't know if everybody knows you.
I think I've met everyone before, but I just thank you all for the opportunity on this study. And I think that, as I said before, the worst thing that we can do is to let us collect us. And I think that we are in a very unique position with the infrastructure bill that's coming out, with all the grant funding, with COVID, just the importance of broadband. And I think that I'm very confident that we're going to be able to, we're not going to be able to solve every issue with broadband, but I think we're going to be able to make a dent within the next few years. And, the authority's here to assist you folks. And, but at the end of the day, as Lori said, we want to make sure that we prioritize. We need to prioritize the communities. We can't do everything at once. And that's going to be the difficult part. And I think that's where you folks will play a very important role in determining, which communities we look at first, and there's unique opportunities as far as grant monies. And we talked about CDBG before and low to moderate income. That was one of the things in Lewis County that was successful, that they looked at CDBG monies. So we can help you folks in trying to work on finding a solution for broadband. And again, it's a marathon. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Yes.
Well, thank you, Carl, Lori, and Dave. It was an excellent presentation.
Rick has a question.
Hey, Rick, go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, thank you. I represent the southeastern part of the County, like Larry Denisha, is very rural. I've been in contact with Slick in the past with some members of the Colton area, and it almost seems impossible we're ever going to get anything done there. We're very rural, but the students there that have to do remote learning are just as important as anywhere else. But I don't see anything happening there for decades, which to me is unacceptable. I think we need to find some way to get a better return on investment, to get these facilities, this infrastructure in place. I don't have the answers, but I do think it needs to be addressed, not just the main thoroughfares. We've got to get everybody. But I just wanted to throw that out there.
So for Dave, Lori, and Carl, Rick is in that green area. That's who he represents. The SpaceX and those areas are eligible for grants. So federal funding.
Yes.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I know that in the past that there had been some grants giving to the areas, but they never finished some of the places and completed the grant, and they paid some fines instead because it was cheaper. I don't know the validity of it, but that's what I was told at the time. And that to me is unacceptable.
I've heard that as well, but I think it's really a issue for the grant provider that you have to go back to, not, that one be tough for anybody else to really fix.
Okay.
I do know though that the state is out there auditing all of those jobs, and they have been seeking many corrections, things that didn't get done that were reported done and stuff. So the state is, I talked to the broadband program office yesterday, and he said that in one instance, it's the third time they've been out there. But in any case, they are at least actively engaged in auditing every dollar they spent, making sure it's really done. So hopefully that'll get done.
Well, Dave, you had mentioned the taxation. So a lot of that taxation is regulated by the state. Is it not per strung mile? Is that part of it, or is it?
I don't know.
You're talking about the fiber fee issue.
Yeah.
That's a different issue.
The state, yes, but on the taxes, we don't pay taxes, so I don't know for certain. I talked to some other providers who said it is a flat fee per mile, but I don't know who actually determines it, if it's the municipality, local municipality, or if it's the state, but they're using the recommended amount. I don't know.
Okay. Something we can look into.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Is it okay if we leave?
You sure you don't want to stay, Lori?
No, Lori, you're required to stay.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Thanks again for coming, Lori. Dave and Carl. All right, we'll start in with our resolutions. The first resolution we have concerns our highway with Mr. Don Chambers. And that resolution is modifying the 2021 budget for the Department of Highways for acquisition and construction of an equipment garage and sand/salt storage building in the town of Potsdam. Moved by Mr. Lightfoot, second by Mr. Smithers. Discussion, Mr. Chambers, are you with us? There he is. Okay, go ahead, Don.
Yes, of course. Yes, this resolution makes available $3.4 million for an estimated cost of development and construction of a vehicle equipment storage facility, and also the salt storage and site development for that facility. Taking funds out of the highway reserve accounts and the road, and also out of road machinery funds. So those are funds that are available in the department's reserve accounts. That would be funding this project.
Questions, Mr. Burke?
Don, I was just wondering, when the acquisition of the land was discussed, there was talk about, maybe some alternate plans for the site. would it not be important to know what a long-range plan of even 3 to 5 years might look like as you engage the architect or the engineer to draft this?
Absolutely, Mr. Burke. And that consideration I've taken to heart, with that discussion, absolutely. We have a considerable amount of acreage, and I would concentrate this development so I wouldn't hinder future development for multiple facilities. It's considerably large enough for additional facilities. So, and I will make sure that anything that we plan will provide for additional facilities or additions.
Thanks, Don.
Of course. Thank you.
Anyone else? So the gist of this, Mr. Chambers, is we'll be paying for this out of our funds that we have. We won't be bonding for this third equipment garage.
That is the, yes, sir. That is the proposal that's before you.
Okay. Any further questions for Mr. Chambers? Seeing none, all those in favor, Mr. Perkins, go ahead.
I'll be abstaining due to my employment.
Okay, so noted. Anyone else? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried with Mr. Perkins abstaining. Okay, our next resolution is authorizing the acceptance of real property obtained by the state of New York relative to County Route 35, known as Slab City over Trout Brook Bridge Replacement Federal Pass-Through Project, PIN number 75394, PIN number 3341700. Moved by Ms. Curran, second by Mr. Denisha and Mr. Sheridan. Mr. Chambers.
Yes, this project, you've seen several resolutions come forward. It's the replacement of a bridge at the Potsdam-Morley Road intersection. This project will require the realignment of and replacement of the existing bridge at that location, realignment of the stream bed, and also safety improvements by relocating both legs of the Potsdam-Morley Road as it enters onto County Road 35. Moving one leg to the north and one leg to the south along County Road 35. With this, the state of New York is acquiring the real estate that is necessary for the bridge construction, stream relocation, detention ponds that are going to be required in the intersection improvements. So once the project is completed, New York State will turn the property acquired necessary over to the county, and the county is to maintain the project as a county project going forward.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Chambers? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Don, if you would you give us an update on the outpost in Russell and Lisbon and how's construction going?
With both facilities where you have had the majority of the walls and footings poured, and we are working on now the slab placements for the floors in the garages. We're looking at at least occupying the two areas for operations in December and having substantial completion by the end of December. Some of the interior work will continue probably into January, February. But as I said, substantial completion of those two different outposts in December, substantial completion of that.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Chambers concerning the outpost? Okay, thank you, Don.
Would you like an update on the projects, sir?
Yes, go ahead, yeah.
Yes, and I will be brief, I have them outlined. County paving projects, I plan to have complete by October 21st. Island Branch Bridge and Fowler is planned to be open by October 8th. The County Road 27 bridge in Russell is planned to be open mid to late November. Browns Bridge should be open somewhere in late October. County Road 54 bridge should be open by the end of October. Halfway House in Waddington is open currently. Guerin Road in Lawrence is open. The bridge style large culvert on County Road 51 in Lawrence is open. Jones Road in Hopkins should be open by mid-November. Northumberland Bridge project removal is scheduled for completion in early summer of 2022. Water and sewer lines are under the bay at this point. That's the majority of our projects that are going on.
It's a lot of work. Any questions for Mr. Chambers? The water and the sewer is the sewer in Morristown. Do we have that pump, that $500,000 pump installed?
They are working on the actual building that goes, that the pump will be placed in. So that's all on schedule as far as receiving the pump and the standby generator. So things are progressing, and we're basically on schedule with that project.
Okay, excellent. Okay, thank you, Don.
Thank you.
Next up, real property, we have Bruce Green. The first resolution is authorizing the collection of omitted taxes. Moved by Mr. Smithers, second by Ms. Curran. Go ahead, Mr. Green.
Okay, thank you. Our first resolution tonight has to do with omitted taxes. That just is that's a yearly resolution that we come to you for, authorizing us to collect omitted taxes. And what that is when a property sells that has an exemption on it and the new owner isn't entitled to that exemption, this allows the taxes to be assessed to that at the next billing cycle.
Okay, any questions on this resolution for Mr. Green? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Next
Thank you.
resolution is adoption of the equalization rates for the 2022 county taxes. Moved by Ms. Curran, second by Mr. Lightfoot. Go ahead, Mr. Green.
Okay. This is the other yearly resolution that we come forward to you with, just approving the equalization rates for this coming year. The equalization rates are given to us by New York State, and these are used to apportion county taxes on the town and county tax bill. You'll see also you'll see behind that, the second sheet shows the actual equalization rate for last year, 2020, and now what it is for this year. We had one revaluation done in the town of Brazier this year, and two are scheduled next year. One in DePoyster and one in Louisville.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Green? Mr. Lightfoot?
Am I correct in assuming that the italics mean that it's changed from the prior year? Or is there some other reason?
No, that's correct. That's correct, Joe. I did
That's
that.
correct. Disregard, Bruce.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Next resolution is authorizing real property tax law correction of errors. Moved by Ms. Curran, second by Mr. Sheridan. Go ahead, Mr. Green.
Okay, just as I mentioned just a couple minutes ago regarding omitted taxes, here is a omitted tax for a revised transition assessment. Transition assessments is money that actually comes back from New York State when a town does a revaluation for the state-owned lands. And we had a revised assessment that was not seen in time and did not go out on last year's tax bill to New York State. So of those tax map numbers, those 5 numbers there, it is a corrected tax bill, $112,240.17. And what that means is this allows us to bill New York State for that for the next cycle, which would actually be the 2023 town and county tax bill.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Green? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce.
You're welcome.
Next up is our county attorney, Mr. Stephen Button. And the resolution is authorizing a settlement agreement between McKesson Corporation, Cardinal Health, Inc., AmeriSourceBergen Drug Corporation, PSS World Medical, Inc., Kinray LLC, Belco Drug Corporation, American Medical Distributors, Inc., and St. Lawrence County with respect to an action related to an opioid crisis. Moved by Ms. Curran, seconded by Mr. Perkins. Go ahead, Mr. Button.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me. I was having a little bit of difficulty with my camera. The resolution that you have before you is the 3rd resolution that I have brought to the board with respect to the settlements ongoing with in regards to the opioid litigation that the county has been involved with for some time now. If you'll recall, the first resolution was with respect to Purdue Pharma. The Purdue Pharma settlement, significant settlement that will ultimately be between $4.5 billion and $7 billion over the course of the life of that settlement, contingent on several factors that are really outside of our hands, the number of plaintiffs that it encompasses, as well as the time that it will take to move forward. The second resolution I brought before you was with respect to the second manufacturer. That was Johnson & Johnson, also known as Janssen. The second resolution identified that there would be a certain amount of money that would be payable, essentially over a 10-year period, to the county. That amount of money would be payable in a sort of phased way, some of it being restricted, some of it not being restricted. The resolution that you have in front of you is with respect to the distributors, primary distributors. This is not all of the defendants that are left in this litigation. There are still about 4 or 5 defendants that are left, but these are the major distributors associated with the opioid pandemic. As you may note from the resolution, this indicates that the proposed settlement for St. Lawrence County is over an 18-year period. There would be a range based on, once again, the number of participants, although it does appear that everyone that I'm aware of at this point intends to participate. So it is likely that we will be on the higher end of the settlement value. The higher end of the settlement value identified in the resolution is approximately $3.2 million to St. Lawrence County over the course of that 18-year period. Those monies would start flowing in February of 2022. It would appear that about $655,000 of that would be completely unrestricted. The rest would be restricted under a similar formula to that we saw with respect to the Purdue Pharma settlement, but restricted means that it has to be dedicated towards activities that are related to the opioid pandemic recovery process. That includes chemical dependency programs, opioid treatment programs. It also includes law enforcement efforts and activities. It could involve representation through our indigent defense models as well. So those departments have been specifically impacted by the opioid pandemic. By authorizing this resolution, I will submit this by October 5th. The deadline was October 10th. And we should be included in that final settlement associated with these distributors.
Any questions for Mr. Button? I'm going to stick with what I've been doing all along. I've been voting no. I think it's the doctors that prescribe the opioids They're the ones that are primary responsible. They're not being held responsible in this lawsuit. Any more questions? All those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bunny. Okay. Next up is our treasurer, Renee Cole, and the resolution is amending resolution number 14-2021 for bank depositories and investment of county funds. Moved by Ms. Curran, second by Mr. Smithers. Renee, go ahead, and Ms. Haggard. Ms. Cole.
Thank you. So typically this resolution is brought to you in January as part of the reorg meeting, but because of some changes, I'm bringing it a little bit early. You'll see it again in January, but this is just intended actually for a change in state law. But I'll start, there's two changes with this resolution. The very first change is on the first page in the deposit section. I've asked, I'm increasing the maximum allowable amount there to 75 million. It was 35 million. And that's really to reflect current practice. This year, especially this year, we've found that we're getting the best opportunities at Community Bank, which is great because it's a local bank of ours and we're able to utilize them for our funds. They're giving us the best rates on CDs and money markets. So we're keeping a minimal amount right now in our key bank, which has always been traditionally, at least for the past few years, where we were most with our funds. So the increase to 75 million will actually allow for the CD money market. Sales tax has always been deposited there initially. So that's the first change. I don't know if you have any questions on that.
Okay, doesn't look like it. Continue.
Okay, the second change is a couple of pages back. It's under section 10. And this is why I was bringing this, but while I was at it, I had to adjust those maximums for Community Bank. Under permitted investments, then from the 9th bullet down, there's 5, we added 5 new bullets. You may recall that NISAC was lobbying on our behalf, on counties' behalf of counties, for an expanded list of authorized investment opportunities to choose from. And the changes to this policy just reflect those changes to state law July 1st. It'll give us another option other than CDs or money markets. Right now, treasuries aren't paying well. I didn't mention earlier, but our rates, to give you an idea, our rates in our general and our checking account that we were using it in Key Bank are down to 0.01. It's pretty sad. So we're getting at Community Bank, we are receiving on our money market 0.20 and on our CDs of 0.30. But a couple of years ago, we were buying CDs for 2.3 and 0.5. So it's tough to make anything right now on it. These changes will give us another opportunity in addition to what we're limited to right now. So I don't know if there's any other questions.
It doesn't appear today. Continue if you got more.
That is it for the changes with this resolution, but if I could, I have a couple of other items I was just going to mention briefly.
Okay, we'll vote on the resolution first. Any questions for the county treasurer? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Okay, Ms. Cole, go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to mention, some of you may be aware, I'm sure that our tax auction wrapped up on Saturday afternoon, and we have some very preliminary results, if you're interested in that. We had 105 parcels in the auction this year. We had 351 registered bidders. Last year there was 388, so it was down a little bit. We were down 5 parcels from last year as well. The total parcels with bids out of 105 parcels, we received, all 105 did receive bids on that. The total bids on the parcels were $1,757,000, some change. The total taxes owed on these parcels was $146,000 on the 105 parcels.
So
There,
Renee,
say that again, I'm
Renee,
sorry.
we're having a terrible connection. Can you tell us what was the taxes that were owed again?
946,000.
Okay,
And
that's better.
there were a couple of parcels that we have to split the proceeds with the oil spill fund, but all in all, it's looking like it was a very successful auction again for us. So,
Okay.
any questions on the auction?
So Mr. Denisha was looking for the bid numbers. I believe it was, there's 351 bidders and the amount was 1,757,000 and change.
Yes.
The taxes owed were 946,000.
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to talk about sales tax? You sent that out. I just was checking my email. I didn't notice that you'd sent it out. Go ahead.
I was just going to mention that it was sent out for September. It's not the end of a quarter or anything, so it's really hard. It's difficult to judge until we do the reconciling payments at the end of the next quarter. But it's looking positive, comparing it to the year before. Last year was such a strange year, with the COVID, with the total shutdown and then the huge adjustments. It's really tough. I'm not comfortable really saying what I hazard a guess, although we did very well the second quarter on it. I wanted to mention that I sent it out in case some of you hadn't seen your email yet. And the last thing I just wanted to mention was the July bank rec summary was on Google Drive for you.
Thank you. Anyone have any further questions for our county treasurer? Okay. Thank you, Renee.
Thanks. Good night.
Next up is our Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act with BROADBAND. And the resolution is authorization to modify the PY20 budget for the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. Moved by Mr. Sheridan, seconded by Mr. Lightfoot and Mr. Reagan and Ms. Curran. Go ahead, Ms. Ladra.
Thank you for that. We have received an additional funding increase in allotment because dislocated worker funds were recaptured from multiple states. So we are the benefactor of $1,030.
Any questions for Ms. Lashaw? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Next resolution is authorizing the chair to sign the St. Lawrence County Local Workforce Development Area Local Plan. Moved by Mr. Reagan, second by Mr. Sheridan and Ms. Kerr. Go ahead, Ms. Lashaw.
Thank you. The local plan provides regional employment data, in-demand occupations, partner roles, expectations, and their coordination within the system of delivery. It is rewritten every 4 years with revisions every 2 years at the midway mark. It has been approved by our Workforce Development Board.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Lashaw? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Thank you, everyone.
Next up, for Human Resources, we have Johnny Dorothy, and the resolution is authorizing the Group Health Plan Administrator for the St. Lawrence County to submit a claim against Blue Cross Blue Shield regarding a class action settlement. Moved by Mr. Smithers, second by Ms. Curran. Go ahead, Ms. Dorothy.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Hello? Okay.
Yes.
So there was a class action lawsuit filed against Blue Cross Blue Shield and the individual Blue plans for allegedly entering into an agreement to not compete against each other. Blue Cross Blue Shield settled prior to litigation in the amount of about Blue Cross Blue Shield for third-party administrative services and could have been affected by their actions. We have the opportunity to file a claim to receive a portion of the settlement, and I'm requesting approval to submit a claim.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Dorothy? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carried. Thank you, Johnny.
Thank you.
Next up, we have for information technology, we have Rick Johnson. The resolution is proclaiming October 2021 as Cybersecurity Awareness Month in St. Lawrence County. Moved by Mr. Denisha, second by Mr. Perkins and Mr. Reagan. And Ms. Kerr, she lost me there. I lost my secondary there for a minute. Go ahead, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Akers. Hello again. In 2004, National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, the NB, proclaimed by Division of Department of Homeland Security. And I think we're at a fortuitous time. I happen to be having a conversation with the county administrator. And as you all know, I'm going to be speaking to the board about our own St. Lawrence County cybersecurity posture. So it was fortuitous timing. I just happened to mention this to her, and she said, we should have that proclaimed. And I said, that's a wonderful idea. So this is for the first time, and I hope just the first time of something that we'll do on an annual basis. The purpose is for all of us to raise our cybersecurity awareness. And I think it's it's very good to do institutionally for better security here at work, and we can all benefit from being more careful about security matters at home.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Johnson concerning this resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next up, we have a resolution by Mr. Reagan. Jim, if you'd like to read it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to introduce a resolution calling upon New York State Governor CATV and the Commissioner of the Office of Temporary Disabilities Assistance to expedite the release of emergency rental assistance program funding to provide relief to those impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, eviction restrictions, and the eviction moratorium.
Okay. Mr. Reagan, you're moving that resolution?
Yes.
Moved and seconded by Mr. Sheridan and Mr. Smithers. Mr. Burke. Okay. Mr. Reagan.
Mr. Chair, I asked, and I want to thank the county attorney for drafting this. The reason I asked to have this resolution introduced is I think it's critical this time for the county to add its voice to those who are calling upon the state of New York to address the problem that they've created. There are literally thousands of rental units in St. Lawrence County whose owners have not received any rent for going on over a year. There are utility companies that are not being paid. There are families that are facing eviction. It is imperative that the state of New York, which created this problem, address this problem by releasing the funds that have been provided to address this problem that the government created. The last time I asked social services, they said only 3 landlords had received any money, even though hundreds have applied. I think it's critical that those agencies that we have tasked with assisting with this problem, in order for them to be credible, the state of New York needs to release this money so that landlords can be compensated, so that families don't have to live in fear of eviction. And it's a matter of simple fairness and simple equity that the small business people who rent out an apartment or a couple of apartments or several apartments be compensated for what they're doing. They still have to pay taxes, they've been paying, picking up the tab, and this is a crisis that the state and federal government created, and it's imperative that the state and federal government step up to the plate and fix the problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reagan. Anyone else like to comment? Mr. Burke?
Thank you, Jim, for bringing it forward, and I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor if I could.
Certainly. Mrs. Haggard, I think you had your hand up next.
I'm certainly all in favor of the people, both the renters and the landlords getting their money. I would certainly support this, but I take exception to the fact that, and maybe I'm misunderstanding this, I don't think the state and federal government caused COVID. So I hope that's not what was meant. But I will support this because I know here in Potsdam, there are a lot of people in that predicament.
Next up is Mrs. Curran. Ms. Curran, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I just would like to be added as a sponsor, and I would say that no, they didn't create COVID, but they never waited to see whether anybody could pay their rent or not. They just told everybody they didn't have to pay their rent. So now the landlords are stuck for hundreds of thousands of dollars, but still expected to pay all of their bills. So, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else before Mr. Reagan comments? Seeing none, Mr. Reagan.
I just would like to echo that it was the state of New York and the federal government that created this eviction, this policy that people don't have to pay the rent. And in many cases, let me rephrase that. In some cases, there are individuals who did not lose their job, who continued working or continued receiving the assistance, that pays for their living, and they were told you don't have to pay rent anymore. And now those people face eviction. So I think it's imperative that the state and federal government step up to the plate, reimburse the landlords who have been forced into the role of unwilling social services agencies so that life can get back to normal as soon as possible. So, I urge my colleagues to join me in voting for this.
So, anyone else? My understanding was that the state has already received billions of dollars from the federal government for this and just has not released them. Something like 2 billion and only 300,000 or 400,000. I'm scared to give you the figures because I'm not accurate, but it's
I don't know what the correct figures are either, but it's ridiculous and it needs to be addressed, and this needs to go to the highest levels of the state so that they understand this is a crisis that's of their making.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Reagan. Next up, vacancy review committee. I believe we have Ruth with us. Go ahead, Ms. Doyle.
Good evening. You have two departments, solid waste and highway, and then you have one vacancy with the one-stop WIOA. I believe that Don is with us for the first, which is solid waste.
Yes, thank you, Ruth. We actually in solid waste have two vacancies before you. One is a heavy equipment operator due to retirement, and the other is an HEO that has been deployed by the U.S. military for at least a year. We're asking for those positions to be filled so that we can maintain our operations.
Any questions for Mr. Chambers concerning position 1 or 2? No. Okay. Go ahead, Don, or Ruth, whoever. Okay. The bridge construction mechanic, the crew leader, the equipment operator, are you going to speak on those, Don, also?
Absolutely. Okay, absolutely. Yes, we have a sign maintenance crew leader that is vacant due to a retirement. That position, does a lot of the layout and organization for our road striping program, our signs, and in the wintertime, provides snow plowing operations as well. So the individual would either be either leading a crew, operating a payloader, or maybe even, as in the past, operated a plow truck for the sign maintenance crew leader. And the bridge construction individual took a position with the state of New York Corrections. And that position is one of 5 bridge construction mechanics that we have on our 2 bridge crews. Our bridge crews have been very busy, as well as all of our other crews, but we have a lot of work for the bridge crews on maintenance and construction of bridges. And as with that position as well, does snow and ice operations in the wintertime. I believe that you also have motor equipment operators before us, correct, Mr. Akers?
Yes, continue. Don, go ahead, please. Yeah.
Okay. We also have the motor equipment operators that I have one that went to work for Spectrum, and another that took a position with one of our towns for both of them for additional funds over what the county is paying. And those positions, again, motor equipment operator, involved in all of our highway maintenance and road construction, and snowplow operations in the winter. So coming into a very critical time of the year where we have no additional staff for additional to cover the routes. We basically have one person for each route on each shift. So that would require overtime to cover any position that isn't filled. So all the positions, at the department, we're pretty slim on our numbers of individuals. We are bare bones as far as our staffing numbers, and it's crucial to operations to keep our numbers where they're at.
Any questions to Mr. Chambers concerning any of these positions? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chambers. Mr. Burke. Is that what you said, John? Yeah. Okay. You're muted, John, I believe. Yep. You're still muted.
Sorry about that. The cost of training, Don, the turnover, what's involved with that?
Well, Mr. Burke, it varies. Certainly the crew leader, sign maintenance crew leader, that's a lot of knowledge that comes along with that, and that hopefully we have an individual that will take over that position within the department, because a lot of knowledge is required for that. But as far as the basics, like for a motor equipment operator, we usually have at least 40 hours with another employee training them on snowplow operations. So it does hurt us. It does, it's going to incur overtime charges to get our staffing up to level. So But the different levels of and positions have different skill sets and require, as you go up the ranks, require more training and basically more qualifications.
Thanks, Don.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Mr. Reagan has a question.
Don, at the vacancy committee, when we discussed your need for drivers with commercial driver's licenses, we discussed the CREST program at SUNY Canton, which was started with the assistance of the Industrial Development Agency. Has there been any, we also talked about using the county's program to assist with tuition to help people pay for that training so that we could get more people qualified to be drivers. Has there been any has your office looked at that, and is there any progress on that?
Mr. Reagan, we did speak of that with the county administrator at that meeting, but we would need to go even further and have some discussions, I believe, with creating different types of positions. Currently, the motor equipment operator requires a CDL coming in the door, and we would need to maybe rewrite or some positions in order to facilitate that. Certainly, that's something that we need to work on, but I can tell you that I have not done that in the last few days, but something that is likely going to be needed. It's been on the national news and state news as far as CDL shortages for the school bus industry. Well, our industry is having the same issues with CDL drivers. So I appreciate you mentioning that.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Smithers.
On some of these positions, there's been turnover that's been pretty fast. And you mentioned something about a person leaving for a higher paying job. How do these salaries, like motor equipment operator, compare to the salaries that the towns are giving their employees for similar jobs? Have you made any comparisons there?
Well, for the one town in particular, and it's a rural town, it's a couple dollars an hour more. The private sector position that was the other individual was considerably more money than what the county is paying.
Okay. Mr. Reagan.
And Don, during the meeting that we had, we discussed the idea of, in exchange for any tuition assistance, to get the training in order to get a CDL license to qualify for a position, that the person would agree to work for the county for a set period of time. And so, I think it would be in our interest to have discussions with the CREST program and John Pinkerton at the IDA in order to expand the pool of applicants, because that was one of the issues that you brought up, was that with the current shortage, you're finding it harder and harder to find good people, the kind of people that you want. And I think it's important that, we as a county work on helping people get the skills they need to get the kind of jobs that are available here in St. Lawrence County, and get the training they need to make them employable. So, you know, moving ahead on that, I think would be helpful. And if you need to come back to us to make that happen, please do.
Yes, sir. I plan to have additional discussions with the county administrator and HR of how we can accomplish this, but certainly appreciate that and support, you know, on the job training to get our employees to where they need to be.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chambers. Ruth, we have another position of the one-stop wheel. Are you just talking about that? We have somebody else, Barb.
Barb is here.
Hello. This vacancy is due to a retirement, and it leaves our unit with 2.5 counselors. Of the remaining counselors, one started August 24th, and the other has been with us for less than 6 months and is currently on maternity leave. The WIOA program is a complicated program with a long learning curve, and filling this vacancy now would allow our senior employment and training program coordinator, who has 30+ years of experience, the opportunity to work with the new counselor before his retirement, which is anticipated to happen within the next year.
Okay, any questions for Ms. Ladro? Seeing none, looks good. Barb, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barb.
So next up, our county administrator's report, we have Ruth Doyle. The first resolution is calling on the state of New York to increase and fully fund County Law 18B, assigning council statutory pay levels. Moved by Mr. Lightfoot, second by Mr. Smithers.
So this resolution and those that follow, all the way to the last one this evening, were ones brought forward at the NISAC conference we attended. One of the areas that certainly has plagued St. Lawrence County for a number of years is finding attorneys who can report and also make somewhat of a living in some respects based upon the number of cases that require outside or assigned counsel representation. So this resolution requests an increase. It doesn't identify what that number looks like. However, in talking with our public defender, the latest recommendation made would take the current $60 per hour for misdemeanors and $75 for felonies up by half. So it would take it to $120 per hour for misdemeanors and $150 for felonies. However, this resolution only speaks to needing an increase, recognition for St. Lawrence County in the way that we have folks traveling from all over parts of the state to make representation here once conflicts have been determined. So this would go a long way, I think, in assisting or attracting folks to represent folks in St. Lawrence County.
Any questions for Mrs. Doyle concerning this resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Next resolution is calling on the governor to complete Affordable Care Act enhanced federal Medicaid assistance percentage reconciliations that are years overdue and immediately release the federal funds owed to counties and New York City. Moved by Ms. Curran, seconded by Mr. Smithers. Mrs. Doyle.
So this resolution also came forward in what you mostly hear referred to as EFMAP. And counties have pursued getting the information from the state with regard to how much is owed. If you recall, during COVID last year, when the state did their withholds, they called them, of up to 25%, this was one area where the unknown of how much was owed to counties was of interest to either provide this to counties so that they could make it through the COVID challenges that were being made upon revenue, or give counties this money if they were going to continue to withhold based upon revenue expectations. So we have placed the request with the New York State Department of Health for our totals. We've received, we've done that as a FOIL. We've received that in return with their letter of they'll find the information, provide that to us. Other counties are starting to see those totals come in. And as soon as I have those totals, I'll share them with you. They go back to 2015 to 2016.
Okay, any questions for Mrs. Doyle? Mr. Smithers.
On the seventh whereas down, is it 8 or 80?
On the seventh whereas, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Should be 80%, correct?
Yes. My apologies. Add a Y. Thank you, Mr. Smithers.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution as written with the additional Y on the 80, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, the next resolution is calling on the governor and the legislature to suspend any further state diversion of local sales tax for distressed health facilities and work to immediately sunset the law. Moved by Mr. Denisha, second by Mr. Smithers and Ms. Curran. Mrs. Doyle.
So this resolution is the first of two that you'll see throughout the rest of these that address the diversion of sales tax. This first one talks about a fund that was created during COVID, which, if you recall, there was a period of time where hospitals were not allowed to conduct elective surgeries. And certainly this was an expensive endeavor that harmed all hospitals, but certainly in the North Country, we have a heavy dependence for hospitals on the Medicaid population. So there were a number of impacts. What this diversion did was take for St. Lawrence County approximately $450,000 and divide it into two payments throughout the year, but it did not in the legislation identify where those funds would go. So it's not as though it was suggested to us that these monies would be held back, but they'll be diverted to the hospitals in your county. So that was one concern that was taken up. But more importantly, now that hospitals are back providing the surgeries and receiving the income through Medicaid, through health insurance, and a number of other sources, this is asking for work to be done also to sunset the legislation which provided for it to occur in the first place.
Any questions for Mrs. Doyle? Mr. Berger?
Sorry about that. So Ruth, what you're saying is that we don't know where that money went, that 450,000 went, if any of it went to our local healthcare facilities or not.
That's correct.
I mean, can we ask for that? I mean, somebody
We
must
certainly
have
can.
that.
And wisely, John, out of pre-committee, the same question was raised. So I've put the question in to find out, one, if any payments have been received, but if there have also been any way that we could identify that the funds that were withheld from our county were those that went to the county hospitals.
Thank you, Ruth.
Sure.
Anyone else?
County treasurer.
Ms. Cole.
Oh, I don't know if you could see me. Can you hear me okay now?
We can hear you.
Yes.
Okay. I actually think it was more than that altogether for the distressed hospital fund that was taken, and they're still taking a quarter, almost $100,000 per quarter out of that. And I also think that in the law, the way that it was written was if they don't spend it, it could actually end up in the state's general fund. So,
and I believe that was kind of where they think it went to begin with.
Right. I don't know that any of the hospitals have seen any of it. Thank you.
Thanks, Renee. And the overall total was 250 million, 200 million to come from New York City and 50 million from the other counties combined.
Okay, so clearly this was a money grab by the previous governor. It was a direct result of the CARES Act, which basically said that you couldn't put to balance your Medicaid budget, you couldn't pass any of these costs onto the county. And this was the brainchild of Mr. Cuomo saying, okay, we can't do that. How can I balance the Medicaid budget? Well, this is what is the result. And I'll bet you this money is in the general fund. All those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. The next one is urging the state of New York and federal government to expand true broadband coverage to all New Yorkers. Moved by Mr. Denisha, seconded by Mr. Fay.
So quite timely with the presentation of this evening to yet again reiterate the importance of true broadband coverage. This resolution talks to the need for mapping, maximizing funding opportunities, as well as reducing costs associated with that installation. And those topics came up in the discussion tonight about making it more attractive for vendors to come to this area while they know it's an expensive endeavor, but to make sure that broadband, reaches all New Yorkers. So I think it's certainly timely, and with the creation, I think, of a committee to take a look at this, that can also fold into potentially some of the spending with the rescue plan funds as well.
Any comments? I have one. I received an email today from Ted Champagne in Madrid. He thinks that we should add the SEC chair to receive the certified copy of this resolution. And I would like to add that at his request, if there's no objection. Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. The next one is calling for an increase in the share of revenue counties retain for providing State Department of Motor Vehicle Services. Moved by Mr. Lightfoot, second by Ms. Curran. Mrs. Doyle.
So this resolution echoes a few of our legislative agendas over the past 5 years, but certainly has yet to be addressed. We currently receive 12.7% of the county share on transactions relative to St. Lawrence County. This is requesting for an increase to be considered. And I think the latest or last conversation that I was aware of would request that move to 15%. And again, much like the first resolution relative to the increases in salary, it doesn't identify exactly what that outcome would be, except to consider an appropriate increase. So that's what this resolution would be requesting the state consider.
Any comments or questions for Mrs. Doyle? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Our next resolution is calling on the state of New York to immediately make all municipalities whole in the St. Regis Mohawk Tribal Gaming Region that have been impacted by the lack of payment by New York State. Moved by Mr. Smithers, second by Ms. Curran, Mr. Perkins. Mrs. Doyle.
This resolution comes to you certainly among many that were discussed at NISAC relative to different reservations across the state, the Senecas included. This speaks to the St. Regis Mohawk tribe, where we have not seen a payment in St. Lawrence County nor to Messina and Brazier since the fourth quarter of 2019, which was pre-COVID, if you recall. So this would capture not only that quarter, but all of 2020, which comes into March of 2021, and it would cover the 2 quarters so far this year, very soon to be 3 quarters, requesting that the state make us whole on what's owed by the Tribal State Compact.
Okay, any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Next resolution is calling on the state of New York to fully reimburse counties for district attorney salary increases that are set and controlled by the state. Moved by Mr. Lightfoot, second by Ms. Curran and Mr. Perkins. Mrs. Doyle.
So this item has resurfaced after being on what I believe was one of our very first legislative agendas, requesting that increases for district attorneys, which often are tied to judges throughout the state, be funded by New York State. Because we have no control, we receive approximately $50,000 each year, and it has actually gone down just slightly toward the contribution of that salary. It is not a salary that we set. So because the state sets it, we're requesting that they also fund the increases.
Comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Next resolution is supporting the collaboration between the New York State Office of Mental Health, OMH, and the counties in planning and implementing a national 988 suicide prevention hotline. Moved by Ms. Curran, second by Mr. Berg. Mrs. Doyle.
So this resolution got quite a bit of attention in terms of OMH working with counties in order that not only a number be created, but that sufficient resources be put into place to make sure when that number is called that there's resources to respond. So this encourages the partnership to continue with OMH to make sure something, I believe it has a July 2022 date that the FCC needs to act, but it requests that the 988 number be pulled through and crisis support services be provided.
Okay, any questions or comments for Mrs. Doyle? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Next resolution is calling on Governor Kathy Hochul to restore the state county's share of the cost of the 730.20 competency restoration services and make reforms to the program thereto. Moved by Ms. Curran, second by Mr. Perkins. Mrs. Doyle.
This resolution speaks to an issue. I believe I came back to you at least 3 times last year and at the beginning of 2021 relative to the placement or what's known as court commitments associated with mental health and incarcerated individuals. So I believe at most we had 4 individuals incarcerated, and the total I believe was 788,000. And this change came about not as a result of legislation, only a change to the regulation that reduced the state's obligation of a 50-50 split with counties to a 100% county cost. So that wasn't done during budget out in the open. This was a conversation that happened and the regulation came through along with the bills that followed. This year, we've seen a slight decrease in terms of the number of individuals that are held in this way through court commitments, but it still is a cost share that should return at least to half and half.
Okay, any questions or comment for Mrs. Doyle? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Next resolution is calling on the governor and the legislature to end the diversion of county sales tax to pay for the state aid program and begin work to reform the aid program while restoring state funding responsibility. Moved by Mr. Lightfoot, second by Mr. Smithers and Ms. Curran. Mrs. Doyle.
So this is the second of the 2 resolutions I mentioned earlier that reference the diversion of sales tax. A few years ago, I believe it's 3 years ago now, the conversation with regard to a reduction in overall AIM payments would be transferred to counties. And the initial share that our county has absorbed is 1.052 million. So this is divided over the payments taken, I believe, in May and in December. What this asks for is not only consideration to return the diversion of sales tax so that the state takes care of the AIM, but also to take a look at the AIM program and to do some reforms relative to how those funds are paid and what that looks like. Certainly something we could have some input with and provide suggestions for to the state.
Any comments or questions? Mr. Denisha.
Yeah, I support the resolution because the 8% to municipalities was something that was a state, was initiated in Albany. And obviously a couple of years ago, when they cut the AIM funding out of the budget, then there was an uproar by town officials, county officials, and the state said, well, we'll restore the AIM, but the county's going to have to pay for it. My concern, Ruth, is that as a former town supervisor, I understand how important the AIM payments are to the towns. While I support this in concept, I'm afraid, I'm fearful that the state may say, okay, we'll stop making the counties pay for the AIM funding, and we'll just eliminate it, and it'll be done. And it won't be the state's fault, it'll be the county's fault, because this is what they asked for. And the ones that are going to be hurting, obviously the county's going to get more sales tax back, but the our municipalities that we represent are the ones that are going to be impacted by it.
And I think if I could, Mr. Chair, I think the basis for the reduction in this initial cycle of diversion was municipalities that relied, I believe, less than 2% of their budget on it. So I think certainly also an area that could be attended to. I believe that municipalities are in large part, as you speak to, dependent upon AIM payments for many years, and sorting out how to go forward with that. The diversion of sales tax just avoided any conversation about how to do that. And I think there could be a better way to have a conversation about how to make sure that municipalities receive funding, but not necessarily through a diversion mechanism.
Okay, anyone else? All those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, carried. Next resolution is authorizing the chair to sign an agreement with United Helpers, Inc. for space located at 100 Ford Street, Ogdensburg, New York. Sign a business associate agreement and modifying the 2021 budget for the Department for Social Services. Moved by Mr. Lightfoot, second by Ms. Kern. Mrs. Doyle.
This resolution is a follow-up on conversations we began in, I believe, late March, early April. There was an interest in the increase in positions to have space provided to them because the situation in the Harold B. Smith building is already congested. So seeing the number of positions coming in also gave us an opportunity to look around and identify that if we could move individuals that are caseworkers, either side, Prevent or CPS, that we may be able to do a couple of things. And one of which would be to try and have decreased response times and to reduce the stigma attached to caseworkers. The interest in providing the opportunity here is that this would not lock the county into a long-term commitment if in fact this doesn't work. It isn't something the county has tried before. We looked at the potential of moving some employees across Judson Street over to the Human Services Center. I believe that was almost a decade ago, and that didn't come to fruition. And looking at the situation now and our opportunity to have a number of caseworkers, this would include about 15 to 17 caseworkers with supervision who would locate their offices in Ogdensburg and be able to respond. I believe the department has already begun working on what that model would look like, and we would bring you regular updates to determine if it's successful. If it isn't successful, which I'm not above saying that it may not be, we would bring you alternative options associated with that. So since we've been working on it, employees have been hired, but we've been able to use the luxury of the HEAP space that was renovated last year for their housing during this time. And as we move toward October into November, our HEAP staff are going to be returning. So there's not going to be the convenience of the space that we've had, and we'd really like to move forward. This would allow us on a month-to-month basis to give notice of 30 days and be able to exit the space.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. The next resolution is declaring October 2021 as the first St. Lawrence County History Month. Moved by.
This is already adopted.
Oh, is it?
Yes,
Okay.
if you note, this is just an info item. I wanted to share what our plans are with you. So last year, if you recall, when we appointed the interim historian independent of our former relationship with the association, the local historians got together and made a determination that October should be St. Lawrence County History Month. So last year in December, as you can see on the resolution, they adopted October 2021 as the first. And in recognition of this, what we'd like to do at the board meeting is host a COVID-safe reception that will highlight and exhibit some of the town's histories. What we'd like to do is have the main level of the courthouse spread out so that we could have local historians share photographs in an exhibitory type function, and also have a small reception COVID-safe. But we would give an opportunity for us to kick off the first St. Lawrence County History Month with great anticipation toward March of 2022, which will be the 220th anniversary of the county. So this was an opportunity in my mind to give the local historians an opportunity to choose the month they want to recognize. Naturally, you would think March would be because of the founding of St. Lawrence County, but their hope was they could organize activities, host different events around the county so that folks could enjoy different towns, different communities throughout the month. Any questions about that?
So you're inviting all 30 plus towns and villages in the city? Is that what you're?
Well, some have the ability to join us and others do not. I think that we'll probably break it up over a few years to share with you.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so we're moving on to old and new business. We have a resolution for adopting proposed local law C for the year 2021 for setting the salary of the county attorney. Moved by Mr. Denisha, second by Ms. Curran. And Mr. Lightfoot. Who would like to speak to this? Mrs. Doyle or Mr. Arquette? Mr. Arquette has his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to be added as a co-sponsor.
Okay, so noted.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Ms. Curran?
I would like to be added as a co-sponsor, and I would like to say that this auction that we just had on properties many counties missed being able to take their properties to auction this year because there was a very narrow window between the time they said you could foreclose and the time that they said, oh, now you can't foreclose again. And our attorney made that.
Okay, anyone else? Mr. Byrd?
I won't be supporting the resolution, not because I don't believe Steve is doing a good job, because I think he is. I think it's singling out one person when there are a number of people in our county organization who have done outstanding things, and we simply can't afford to pay everybody who's outstanding. So I won't support it.
Okay, anyone else? Mr. Lightfoot?
If you recall, just a few minutes ago, when we passed that resolution concerning the 18B attorneys, we agreed to raise at least this committee did, to raise the hourly rate to $120 an hour. The average work year is approximately 2,000 hours a year. Do the math. If the attorney, an 18B attorney, worked for 2,000 hours at that rate, his salary would be $240,000 a year. If Mr. Button worked at that rate, he's making $79 an hour for $158,000. My concern is that we have a very competent and skilled and industrious county attorney. He knows what he's doing. We don't have to ask him twice for an opinion, and we don't need to wait a month to get it in writing, because it's right before him in his mind's eye. So I think that the $158,000 is a hell of a deal, folks, for as I said, the skill and the competency that Mr. Button brings to that office. And I think that St. Lawrence County, if it were to lose Mr. Button because of the salary as compared to what we're looking at for an 18B attorney, and I certainly mean no disparagement to the 18B attorneys, they are certainly worth it also. But I think the lead attorney in the county, with the job that he does and with the responsibilities that he bears, is worth twice that, for God's sake. And you've got a district attorney whose salary is upwards of $210,000 a year. So I think it's a heck of a deal, and I'll be voting in favor of it, and I urge everybody else to also.
Mr. Denisha?
Yeah, just one point, Mr. Chairman. I know what Legislator Burke mentioned, that rewarding people because of their performance, and that we've got a lot of great performers, and we do. Would not disagree with him at all on that. Many of our folks go above and beyond. But I just want to make it clear that the reason for the increase in salary for Mr. Button is not because of his performance, but because of his additional duties.
Okay, Mr. Sheridan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to add that this resolution specifically states that should there be a reduction in duties of Mr. Button, such as responsibility for the legal unit in the Department of Social Services, if it's relocated, a review of the compensation will occur and salary will be returned to the prior level. And I also want to know that it wasn't the figure that was pulled out of the air. The $158,000 figure was derived by looking at and comparing salaries with Schenectady County, Dutchess County, Erie County, Orange County, and Ontario County. In Schenectady, they pay $150,000. Dutchess, they pay $168,000. In Erie, they pay $172,000. In Orange, they pay $169,000. In Ontario, they pay $133,000. And I know they're a little, some of those counties are larger, but still, we're in the average because the average salary of those other counties who also rely on their county attorney to provide legal services for the Department of Social Services is what that average is, $158,000, which is what we set for our county attorney. And I've talked to an awful lot of legislators, I think, from what I've gathered in my 3 years on the board, are very impressed with the job that Joe, or that Mr. Button does for us.
Need one of those.
Not only for the board, but for the taxpayers in St. Lawrence County. In fact, I think that from what I understand, Mr. Button has made some pretty nice improvements of moving things along over there at the Department of Social Services since he has been over there several months ago. So that's why I'll be supporting the resolution, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Sheridan. Anyone else? Mr. Requette.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll echo Legislator Lightfoot's sentiments regarding Attorney Button. I certainly thought that Attorney Button should have had a raise doing the duties of Foley County Attorney. But again, with these increased, the increased scope of work in which he's doing makes it an easy vote for me to support. He's knowledgeable in literally every aspect of county government. You know, he immediately responds, I think, to all of our needs, which are very diverse. And I think we're very lucky to have him. And I'm certainly going to support this resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Arquette. Anyone else? Mr. Lightfoot.
I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor, please.
Okay. Kelly?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to be added as co-sponsor as well.
Certainly. So anyone else? I would just echo Mr. Button. Is indeed, he has tremendous output. As Mr. Sheridan pointed out, $158,000 is the average of those county attorneys that have dual responsibilities, both the county's business plus social services. And if you notice tonight, we just lost 2 employees in highway because they can make more money in the private sector. So competition and pay is quite important. And actually, as Ms. Curran pointed out, we generated $1.7 million from the sale. Our tax liability for those properties was $946,000. So which means that we generated about $811,000. It's preliminary, all because Mr. Button was able to get the work done before midnight, before judges block other counties from having their tax sales. We are one of the few counties that were able to have our tax sale. If we could not have had our tax sale, those properties would have been in arrears for another year at the county cost of our taxpayers. So I wholeheartedly support this resolution. I also would like to be added as a co-sponsor. If we don't have any other discussion or comments, we'll move ahead. All those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
So we have John Burke and Margaret Haggard. Okay, thank you. Let's see, where are we here? Anybody else has any old or new business they'd like to bring before the board? Seeing none, Mrs. Doyle, do we have a need for executive session tonight? And for what purpose?
We do, Mr. Chair, and we do with regard to negotiations, with regard to litigation, with regard to personnel, as it relates to the medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation. And we have one appointment to consider.
So the whole shebang, okay. Entertain a moved by Mr. Lightfoot, second by Mr. Fay, go in exec.
Mrs. Haggard had her hand.
Margaret.
Okay, we do have a motion and a second. If you would withdraw your motion, for a minute there, Mr. Lightfoot, so we can have a comment. Is this concerning the executive session? Motion, Mrs. Hager?
No, I'm sorry. I should have spoken up before that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, Mrs. Hager, let me ask Mr. Lightfoot if he would withdraw his motion. And the second by Mr. Fay. Otherwise, we have a motion on the table.
Yes.
He withdraw, Mr. Fay. Mrs. Hager, go ahead, please.
I'm sorry. I should have spoken up before we did that. Are we not doing committee reports at the finance committee meetings now?
No committee reports on the agenda.
Okay.
Would you like to comment?
Yes, I'd like them to be back on the agenda because my committee always fell on the finance committee agenda previously. And we prepared meeting to give a report.
Go ahead, Mrs. Haggard, if you would, please.
Would you like me to give my report?
Certainly.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Did you say something? Somebody say something to me?
No, go ahead, Mrs. Haggard.
Okay. For the St. Lawrence County Chamber of Commerce, I have several things that I'd like to report on since I haven't reported in a long time on this. But I've spoken to Mr. Button about this, possibly starting an agreement with VRBO in addition to what we have with Airbnb, and that's very important and the first thing on our tourism concerns, given that there's a study been done by a professor and some research students at SLU that says that occupancy tax through VRBO would generate close to $38,000. That's something we need to look into, I believe. Market New York funding for New York State was used to support Bassmasters Elite, Bassmasters College Championship Tournament, the Junior Carp Tournament, and Bass Nation in Ogdensburg. Accounting and reporting continues, as well as a digital campaign to promote fishing in the county. It was a successful season. We look forward to completing our filing for reimbursement. A detailed accounting of Bassmaster Elite will be delivered to the board as well. Due to the necessities of the grant, several outside agencies were enlisted to fulfill aspects of the event, and accounting is being confirmed across all events. The chamber is working with the county on helping to promote the multi-use trails with direct mail campaign to the 2021 permit holders. Conversation on snowmobile maps and updates to snowmobile trails on St. Lawrence County trails, as well as a promotion is active with 2 trail maintenance entities for this year. The fall promotion is underway. The county participates in the foliage tracker in New York State and the Adirondack region, which are both promoted online in various ways. We are wrapping up the Market New York grant with the Thousand Islands Seaway region, which includes the development of a video content along the St. Lawrence River. This content will be ready for promotion next spring. Other chamber activities include the open air craft market, which happened out in Madrid, as you all know, at the Power and Equipment Museum, drew approximately 2,000 attendees and 60 vendors. And an important chamber function continues to be informing members and business communities about training events, business development, funding opportunities, and COVID. The latest chamber newsletter can be found at www.slcchamber.org. And the health insurance program continues to grow, and membership remains strong with over 400 members, including a half dozen. And thank you very much for allowing me to do that this evening, even though it wasn't on the agenda.
And thank you, Mrs. Haggard. Ms. Curran, sorry.
So just a question, when you had those 2,000 people at the craft show, did you make sure they were all vaccinated and had masks and stuff on beforehand?
Do you care to respond, Mrs. Haggard?
Well, I can tell Miss Kern that I was not there. Unfortunately, I was attending my 50th high school reunion this weekend and missed it. But you know that if I'd been there, I would have checked. But thank you for asking.
50, okay, all right. Mr. Lightfoot,
Move to executive session, please.
second by Mr. Fay, any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay.